first and foremost, what is weight cycling? It's what it says on the tin in a way. And I guess what I mean by that is we've probably all been there to some capacity where it might be a holiday that we've booked, or there might have been something traumatic in the family that's happened that's resulted in a load of binge eating or whatever. But most people that I've worked with, athletes and non-athletes, they have fluctuated weight to some capacity. And the fluctuation in weight is typically a change in like lean mass, but more so it's probably a change in fat mass as well. So I've got boxers that I've worked with, other combat sport athletes that they would have a gain in fat mass at some period of that 12-week or 12-month year. And then if they've got a fight kind of lined up, they then need to get in shape again to make sure that they can get on the scale and they're in a presentable place to fight. And, I've been there myself. You've got a holiday booked in 8 weeks and you're not happy with how you look. And so you go on a very clean kind of nutritional plan for 8 weeks and you train hard and you get yourself into great shape. And then after that, you've kind of got the motivation of zero because we're in the winter months in the Northern Hemisphere and people feel a bit sorry for themselves. And then they
hibernate.
Yeah, they hibernate over Christmas. We eat loads and then we hit the new year and everyone wants to get back in shape again. So I guess the weight cycling in simple terms is just that increase and decrease in body mass. But a lot of the time it's an accumulation and a decrease in fat mass as well, depending on where you are in that kind of exercise and nutrition regime, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And in the general population, we obviously see as people's weights tend to fluctuate up and down quite a bit. We see increased risk of obesity and, cardiovascular diseases, metabolic diseases. We don't tend to think of those things when we think of athletes because we just think athletes are going to be obviously lean, fit. Maybe we can start with another definition before we get into sort of retirement side or the later stages of an athlete's career. But, what is fat overshooting when we talk about this idea of having to make weight and get leaner to make weight?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting kind of concept that we were reading in the literature. And I guess what we were finding when we were looking at the literature, there was an amount of evidence that was showing that when individuals decrease their fat mass to try and make weight, what inevitably happens with that, and this is what we showed with the data with Rocky, is that because you've got an athlete that might be expending 3,500 calories a day, but they're not consuming 3,000 or 3,500 calories a day because they're actively trying to make a weight, then energy balance is obviously in a negative, and so we are losing weight. But one of the knock-on side effects of that is that some athletes, not all athletes, but in the situation with Rocky, there is an element of muscle wastage, and kind of we enter that stage of catabolism. And so because we haven't got the calories to kind of look after that muscle, yes, we are dropping fat mass because we're in that negative energy balance, but we're also doing it at the expense of dropping a little bit of lean mass. Now, what was really interesting is that you then have an athlete that might present on the scale and they've made the weight, which is great because they can now fight. They haven't lost their purse. If it's a title fight, the belts are still on the line. So it's all hunky-dory on that side of things. But then when they then finish the fight and they go back into living a life like a normal Western person would, they go out and they have dinner. They might have a beer or whatever they want to do in their social circles.
Especially after 8 or 12-week intense camp, you want to loosen the reins a little bit, right?
Right. And there's always an element of cravings for something. Okay. So when they then go back into the realm of energy balance, you could argue that it's almost gone too much the other way. And what we were seeing from some of the literature and with Rocky is that you get this, what they're terming colossal fattening. And what it essentially means is that the accumulation of fat mass is happening quicker than the accumulation of lean mass back to baseline, back to its kind of normal, happy place where it was at the start of the camp. And every time that happens, weight cycling episode to the next episode, that accumulation of fat mass appears to get a little bit worse. And so that's why they termed it in the literature as this colossal fattening. And we've got some retired boxers in the UK here. I won't name names just because it would be a bit rude, but there's retired boxers here in the UK who, when they were competing and making weight, they were in great shape. When they were not in a camp, they used to balloon very heavily. Now that they're retired, they're in a very sorry state, and they are what we would probably term clinically obese. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Mark, it brings in all of the wrath of, okay, well, what's the problem of that now at 40 years old or 45 in terms of cardiometabolic disease, obesity, atherosclerosis, heart problems? And so that's one of the problems of the weight cycling.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, once we start getting into this chronically elevated blood sugars and blood pressures going up and chronic inflammation's going up, I mean, we're getting into a whole raft of problems, not just physical, but as they dovetail even into mental health, which obviously in the back end of a boxing career is already taken a bit of a toll as well.
Yeah.
But if we circle back, I mean, this is from your recent paper, 5-year analysis of weight cycling practices in male world champion professional boxer, potential implications for obesity and cardiometabolic disease. Could you just circle back and tee up again the span of that sort of 5 years and the how many fights you were looking at with this individual?
Yeah, so anyone who's followed me on social media, the individual, and he won't mind me saying, but it's Rocky Fielding from Liverpool. And I guess we were really fortunate that we had an athlete that was 100% brought into the fact that we were going to collect some data and we were going to do some research on him. He knew the benefit of it. He knew kind of how it could help him and how we could improve the weight making strategies from some of his previous kind of methods that he used. And so Rocky brought into the process, and overall we managed to track Rocky for 11 contests. So this was 11 professional registered boxing fights, and that was over a 5-year period. In there was a British title win, there was a Commonwealth title win, and then he won the regular world title over in Germany against Tyrone Zoiga. And then that was the belt that he then defended in his final 11th contest against none other than Canelo at Madison Square Garden in New York.
Amazing.
So we basically had 11 contests over a 5-year period that we managed to collect data. And it's funny, I was just on a previous call there where we're actually going to present this at a workshop in the UK. And, we didn't have a research question at the start of this at all. It wasn't like a traditional, this is the hypothesis, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to find out. It was the fact that we were fortunate to have access to a very good athlete who was willing to buy into the process. And so I decided, amazing, I'm going to collect loads of data on you. And that's what we did for 5 years. And then, I sat down with two of my colleagues here, Professor James Morton and Dr. Carl Evans. And that was where we decided, look, we've got some great data here that, yes, it's N of 1. Yes, it's a case study. It's not how everyone does it, but there's a real gap in the literature in this space. So let's put it out there and let's see how, see if it's received well.
It's amazing to be able to get, elite professional athletes, because that's always a challenge, isn't it? Of interpreting, research and university level active, fit individuals, but they're not the ones that are playing at the top of their game or world champion boxers. So it is really insightful to be able to see just that breadth of data over 5 years. And, if we even just look at things like a breakdown, a macro breakdown of what a fighter like this might be consuming, outside of that 7 days where they're going to be trying to make weight, what does that roughly look like for a fighter like Rocky?
Yeah, so in the paper we put a kind of typical training day nutritional intake, but what we were trying to do there was at best go a little bit above what his resting metabolic rate would be. Now, bearing in mind that on most days there was double training days, if not triple training days. So his RMR was in the region of between 1,900 to 2,000 calories. And then his typical energy intake was around 2,400. Mm-hmm. So we were above RMR, but if a double training day is happening, he was definitely in an negative energy balance.